and it can be very important. Sequential. What does that mean?
In order.
In order. So let's take 10 actions. Let's take sit-in, let's take lobbying, let's take burning down the Walmart, let's take, I always throw that one in there. Sorry, I shouldn't. What's that? You gotta buy some paper first. So it's a sit-in, let's say a sit-in a congressional office, lobbying campaign for the congressional office, letter writing to the editor, you know, this kind of thing. Is there a sequence to that? You wouldn't start by first thing you do, go in and sit in the guy's office, never having talked to him about what the problem is, never having talked to the public about what the problem is. Wouldn't make sense. Easy to do. So sequential is, and it's not hard to do. If what I do with groups usually is brainstorm some actions, sort out the actions that people are willing to actually work on, and then say sequence them. And they say, oh, what do you mean? It's a sequence. And they say, oh yeah, it's like this. And they have a couple that they argue about. But the point is you can figure out a logical sequence. And then escalate. Why do we escalate? Why is it important that each action has to escalate? Any ideas? Okay, let me help you. First of all, if you don't want people, the chief of police and the mayor of a city to say, oh, we're going to have one more mass march in Washington, D.C. on a Saturday. We know how to do that, that's cool. We got that one down. They'll do it next time, that's cool. You want to have them a little bit on edge. Not think that you want to say, whew, we got through that one, what do we do next? What are they going to do next? So there's that part. So you want to keep the other people a little bit on edge. You also want to keep the movement. If you keep doing the same thing, we tire out. And that's one of the little problems we have with some actions. And a good illustration is the Arlington West, like in Santa Monica. People can't have energy, even though it's important. It's a great action, it's an important action. People can't just keep doing the same thing. They need to feel like there's something happening. So it's both for us and them. But it is very tricky. This is a very tricky one. And the reason why is I always think in any action, the person who loses is the one who has a disproportionate response. So if you go in and first thing you do is you go sit in the congressman's office and occupy it for a week. People say, well, what are these people? You know, what's this about? This isn't fair. They didn't even talk to the guy. Or conversely, I think we talked about the Emmett Pettus Bridge. If they let him march, I'll tell you, if they let him march, I can tell you what was happening. They were going into deep trouble. They would all probably gotten wiped out because that was a very, very deeply prejudiced area. Instead, they the public felt that the response was disproportionately unfair. So escalating is a very, very tricky one, but also a very, very important one. Two other things which I want to mention to you, in terms of thinking of actions and developing actions. Gene Sharp did some very important work in nonviolent actions. He wrote a book, actually the index for one of the 3 books in the series. These 198 categories of nonviolent action. I recommend it to you for a couple of reasons. One, it's a great way to be thinking about what the perspective of possible tools are. He divides them into 3 categories: education and protest, nonviolent non-cooperation, and nonviolent interdiction. And incidentally, his work is towards the protest side. There's another piece we've got to keep as part of that perspective, of that broader thing, is the constructive nonviolence, what Gandhi is essentially 80% of our work. So when we look at this, don't forget, this is not the whole thing, there's also that whole other section. There's another thing which is called 6 points of confrontation, which is also useful. And I'm just going to read this to you quickly. I often use it as a handout. Each of the 4 types of direct action, protest, non-cooperation, intervention, and creative solutions we talked about, can be used at 6 points below. Point of production, where harmful items are created. Point of destruction, where resources are extracted, pollution is released, or natural resources are destroyed. Point of consumption, where products reach the consumer. Point of decision, where plans for the future are determined. Point of assumption, where social norms are developed and upheld. Point of potential, where cultural and historic moments become action opportunities. And those two are like useful for when you're thinking about tactics. Now I'm cutting off quick, we're out of time.
Thank you.
If anybody wants to work more on this, call me. And, I'm happy to help people work their way through it, or help their group figure out where they're going, or whatever. Because we're all